Since 2017, as I began this journey towards becoming educated on sustainability, I've had one overarching goal: to put my time and energy towards launching a business that supports the change I want to see in the world. At heart, I consider myself an entrepreneur. Through failures, as well as successes in this arena, I've learned something during each new venture. And now, I'm on the verge of completing my degree and have worked hard to develop a viable business related to the intersection of electric vehicles, mobility, and renewable energy, specifically solar PV. The vision for this is what I call Sunhawk. The aim is to deliver a solar PV charging solution for electric vehicles that is befitting of the 21st century, one that delivers upon the promise of EV ownership as being helpful to the environment, along with the desire by many EV owners to support the further adoption of EVs. But first, let me tell you why this is even needed. These images represent the primary focus of investment right now in EV charging options. There is limited availability for EV chargers via stationary systems that are dependent upon non-EV users to decide where to site those stations, including businesses and government agencies. EV owners experience range-related issues, often due to inadequate charging options, which impact utility of EVs, especially those with limited range. Plug-in hybrids represent a bridge technology that some buyers get into as a half measure to adopting EVs because they fear the lack of adequate infrastructure and the impact to their own range-related lifestyle issues. Because of this, we set out to address these issues by developing a concept for a charging solution that would offer a compelling alternative or a complementary solution to charging stations. We recently tested a series of hypotheses related to whether EV owners would gain value from this idea. The results of those interviews included responses and insights such as these. EV owners have often bought aftermarket technology to support remote charging and kept it in their cars for backup or emergency situations, paying between $50 and $500. We noted an estimated willingness to pay for a portable or backup charging device between $200 or $1,000, even up to $2,000 in some cases. And a portable charging option would provide, quote, peace of mind and help, quote, save time. And charging anywhere, anytime would, quote, totally eliminate issues related to range. Plug-in hybrid owners almost all report a strong desire to use the EV portion of their range more often and trying to avoid gas stations. The use of solar seems to be something that truly interested a lot of people when it comes to their charging their EV, and this was unprompted in our research. Charging infrastructure is considerably different among larger cities, such as LA, New York City, or near San Francisco, so opportunities might exist in those as well. The old adage, where there's a will, there's a way, doesn't quite seem to have caught up with the EV meets solar PV desires of the market. Companies are attempting to integrate solar into newer models. But what about those already on the road? What about those used EV models now being purchased for the second time? Don't they deserve an opportunity to enjoy clean, renewable power for their EV? Yes, they do. As I began to illustrate the script related to Module 3, Food Waste in the City, and post photos to this Pinterest page, I started to realize that the creativity this class beckons us to use was already present in my efforts to make Sunhawk into an actual company. And while the main theme of the module is harnessing energy from food waste, I still see the cycle of EV ownership as a waste-driven system, not unlike their non-EV brethren. Powering EVs with traditional electricity made from coal or natural gas is a waste-based linear approach to the deliverance of needed transportation, even so that it's cleaner, some would say, as compared to a regular internal combustion engine. And as for adoption, we are still on the left-hand side of Roger's adoption innovation curve, whereby EV owners represent the early adopters in both overall vehicles per capita, even in the countries with the highest adoption rates, which are now barely over 10%. We've yet to reach the point of social proof, as the script suggests, when it comes to EV ownership, especially in the US. There are also ongoing developments in larger EVs, be those buses, mass transit such as trains, RVs, freight trucks, and others. So while our current landscape is dominated by the passenger car, there will be larger vehicles as we move further along the curve, and yet there is no paradigm shift right now. The lack of that suggests a waste mentality still exists in the broader automobile marketplace. Tailpipe emissions equal waste. Junkyards equal waste. Chemicals and other toxic materials used in car manufacturing equal waste. Even with the example referred to within Cradle to Cradle regarding the River Rouge Ford plant, while commendable from a change of thinking standpoint, represents a status quo arrangement within the broader vehicle sector. Why is this? If you read articles on the topic of EVs, you'll note a familiar refrain. Customers aren't buying them because they don't have enough range. Yet most of the folks we interviewed said they adapted to the range limitations of their vehicle, even so that they wish they could have purchased one with more range. Well, what does it take for that to happen? Typically, about $20,000 above and beyond the vehicle's purchase price in order to buy a Tesla and get a 300 plus miles in range on a single charge. There are some vehicles now that are getting closer to the point of equilibrium between demand, meaning mileage and range, and supply, the cost to acquire an EV with such range. But we're not there yet. In Chapter 6 of Cradle to Cradle, McDonough and Brongard write on page 184, when the fuel cell is becoming the automotive engine of choice in the industry, those companies focused on increasing the performance and efficiency of ICE engines might find themselves left behind. They go on to state, innovation requires noticing signals outside of the company itself. Signals in the community, the environment, and the world at large. And finally, they write, imagine what a world of prosperity and health in the future will look like, and begin designing for it right now. I can't think of another project I'd rather be invested in than one that focuses on reducing waste and CO2 emissions, improving adoption of EVs around the world, supporting the continued use and value of used aftermarket electric vehicles, rather than seeing them consigned to a junkyard, to simply waste away while leaching toxic battery fluid into the ground. All the while, creating a liberating experience for customers by giving them the clean, renewable energy they desire, in a solution that is purposefully designed to go beyond the status quo. As the utilities of EVs advances, whether through lighter vehicles, better batteries, or low energy usage, or a combination of all three, the opportunity to greatly impact the nexus will be realized by including solar PV for charging purposes. In Chapter 12 of Food, Energy, and Water, the Chemistry Connection, we read about solar cell and solar PV utilization. In the land of Sunhawk, we are not wedded to a particular cell type, nor a particular application of those cells. We are wedded to the vision of advancing EV adoption, using solar energy to power them, and designing systems that achieve this critical construct of ideas. We are looking at a different demand curve than traditional automakers when it comes to what consumers are willing to pay for in order to support their automotive energy needs. This is not inconceivable to those who choose to make it so. The script states, so what we learn from this is that nexus thinking must include the proper social and political preparations, even when a technology is undeniably simple, effective, and inexpensive, as solar PV is now. The social and political dimensions rival economic considerations in their weight and must be thought through. Those of us who consider ourselves innovators, early adopters, technologists, visionaries, and creators in the food, energy, water nexus domain must be prepared to invest considerable time and energy in helping others see all the benefits that we see in each relevant dimension. I harbor no doubts about the political and economic dimensions afoot within offering ownership of energy to car owners. This is a paradigm shift in every way. Shift we must, should we endeavor to come out the other side of climate change with an adaptive, resilient, and productive society as we go through the structural changes necessary to reduce or eliminate our wasteful approach to energy production and consumption. This includes the reduction of CO2 exhaust associated with ICE vehicle operations. And yet, we've seen this story before. In the late 1800s, electric cars were first manufactured. Why did they not continue to be made or become the predominant source of vehicle-based transportation? Your guess is as good as mine right this minute. But my gut instinct tells me it was the same reasons we don't see a lot of adoption right now of EVs. capacity issues regarding energy production, storage, and dispersal, the technology economical dimension, as well as entrenched parties who don't want to lose their grip on society's insatiable need to go from point A to point B in as timely as fashion as possible. The other factor is a human one. We try to satisfy our needs and wants with the least amount of friction. That is why we see so many problems in the food and waste sectors nowadays. The nexus the course refers to is, in my mind, a representation of the conveniences that have now been identified as problems, but are embedded into a system and a mode of thinking that is both outdated and wasteful. We need to think of these systems as energy-rich rather than wasteful. What is the most energy-rich aspect of our daily lives? The sun that shines down upon us. That's what. With Sunhawk, the imagery we are creating is one of freedom of movement, represented by the hawk, which is akin to the experiences we gain from the mobility offered by the average car. The choice of color represents the sun in orange and the energy in green. Taken together, these things represent the freedom of movement offered by the sun should we choose to adopt this approach to vehicle mobility and power. So in a sense, Sunhawk is designed to represent a simple yet logical trip back in time where people took the resources closest to them and made them viable. A time before resources were taken from faraway lands, manufactured into objects of utility, and then dispersed all over the world where they entered a stream of so-called waste. In the script, Dr. Culhane references a cartoon in which he writes, "But as the famous Pogo cartoon states, we have met the enemy and he is us." Well, if we are to win the fight against climate change, we need tools that can be adaptive, resilient, and are proven from a technological standpoint as much as we need new innovations and creations. I'd posit that such tools should also offer personal liberties, reduced cost, and distributed energy production closest to the point of usage. With Sunhawk, my aim is to deliver one such tool.